Okay, we're going to try this again. This has been happening a little bit, so hopefully the intro will go this time. And welcome everyone to another exciting adventure on Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight I'm joined by two guests who I'm sure need no real introduction. They are everywhere and sharing great information. So it is my privilege, my honor to have them on for a second time. And so I will turn it over to them to let them introduce themselves and talk about their new documentary. So I will let them take it from there. So I give you the one, the only Journey to Truth podcast.
Thanks for having us, man. Definitely, we're happy to be back. And yeah, for those who don't know, Aaron and I host Journey to Truth podcast. We've been doing it since 2019. So we just had our anniversary, right, Aaron?
Yeah, 7 years. Yeah, we just had the 7-year anniversary beginning of this month.
Wow, 7 years. So we've been at this 7 years, and we're 5 conferences in now. We each wrote a book. We've just released our second documentary, and we have hundreds of episodes. It's been quite the journey, and we're excited about it. But this new documentary that's on its way to the streaming platforms now is kind of why we're here today, to promote that and talk about it. It's a documentary building a case for the secret space program, something that we've been into for a long time, and there's a lot there, and there was no proper documentary out there. There is no proper documentary out there until now that kind of covers it in a 2-hour window as best as you can, because it's a very, very deep, lengthy topic. But it was an ambitious project. Took us about 3 years to make, and it's finally done. And we're super proud of it. And we can't wait for everyone to see it. And Aaron, you can add to that if you'd like. But it's we're excited for it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you said it. It's kind of a lot of work, and about 3 years in the making, and the vision kind of came along as we were working on it and turned into what it became. And we were very proud of it. But it's always when you put something out to the world that you've been working on, that you've invested a lot in, you never quite know how the reaction is going to be. And we got just an overwhelming, amazing response to it already. And our hearts are so full. And so thank you all so much, everyone who's watched it and given us amazing feedback, and who loved it. And we hope that we can do our small part to help disclosure and get the truth out about all these things that need to come to the awareness of humanity. So
yeah, and for those who are interested, they can go. Right now is currently available on our Patreon. The best way to probably get there is through our website, journeytotruth.online. Just scroll down on the main page and click purchase here. It'll take you to the link to buy the documentary through Patreon. and it's a purchase to own type of thing. You don't have to be a Patreon member. We would appreciate the support. It's only $5 a month, but we're not asking for that. We just want people to see the film, and it is available there until the streaming platforms pick it up in a month or two, and that time frame is out of our hands. We don't know when that'll happen. So it is the name of the film is called A Lifetime of Silence Behind the Green Door, A Case for the Secret Space Program, and it's named after a military patch that basically classifies a black project, a deep underground military base behind a literal set of green doors where all this advanced technology, extraterrestrials are said to reside. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what it is. But yeah, did you have any questions in particular, Michael?
Well, one of the questions I have is when you're diving into certain parts of the secret space program, where do you determine you're gonna stop going down the rabbit hole, that you've went far enough for this project?
You probably after you've lost your mind, then you probably stop. You know. No, that's a great question. I don't necessarily know how to answer that. I feel like it's so out there. This information is so out there. It's so hard to believe. It's so outside and beyond what we were told, what we are told is supposed to exist, right? And it goes against everything that we've been led to believe about what the shadow government and the military-industrial complex is actually doing, working alongside extraterrestrials, reverse engineering technology, and colonizing space outside of the public eye, right? That's kind of what we're talking about, but you have to get people there first. So that's what our film is doing. It's like building a case. It's not like a mainstream ufology documentary. We're not repeating all the old stuff. That's what all the documentaries over all the years have done for us, including the Age of Disclosure. So those are like the building blocks up to this. So you might kind of like we do our best to bring people from A to Z, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to understand it all in one take, because it's a deep rabbit hole. It takes a foundation of understanding that aliens exist, and we are in fact reverse engineering their technology. Like, you have to come into this documentary at least with that understanding, and I think our audience does, and most people in the world now with the Age of Disclosure, they kind of did that job for us. Thank God, the timing was perfect. So in fact, I think the timing of all of it's been perfect, because we did our soft release on January 9th in a private theater here in Sedona, and shortly after that we put it on Patreon, and it had a good window, right? And then all the Epstein stuff gets released, and I don't think people, like, that's where everyone's focus is. So we caught this good window, and it gained some traction, and then we'll get another wave when it hits the streaming platforms. Where you stop down this rabbit hole is up to you. I think you got to be kind to yourself, and don't try to take on too much at once, because a lot of the information is dark and traumatic, and it involves understanding the horrible crimes against humanity that have been taking place for all these years, and just the suppression of technology and secrets and all that stuff. So Aaron, you might be able to answer that question a little better than I did, but
no, that was a great answer. I guess I'll expand on it a little bit, but that's kind of like, to me, asking, when are you going to stop being interested in a certain topic that is real and you're very interested? It's like, well, never technically, but I think there's different phases of going down the rabbit hole, so to speak, where when you first find out, oftentimes when you first find out about a subject that's fascinating to you, or that's mind-blowing, or that you're like, oh my gosh, this is real, and then you want to take in everything like a fire hose, right? And you kind of just like dig in hard and fast, right? Well, I think that can only last so long. That's not sustainable, because at some point you're going to get burnt out, or at some point you're going to be like, okay, I've pretty much learned generally as much as I possibly can, but there's still always going to be more information that you didn't learn in that phase, right? But I feel like there's that phase, and then you kind of hit a somewhat of a plateau where things just kind of trickle in at that point, or maybe you'll have another wave later on. But I think a good place to kind of, I'll speak for myself with my awakening, going way back to 2012 with my awakening, where the early phase of my awakening was more imbalanced in the dark information, the conspiracy information. I was watching Alex Jones. I was watching Project Camelot videos. I was David Icke. I was going down all those I was just like, whoa, there's this whole crazy conspiracy going on, all this dark stuff and all these dark agendas, but then there's also ETs, and then I kind of went down that rabbit hole with ETs and UFOs and stuff, until I kind of had to hit a point where the spirituality had to catch up to that, right? So I kind of had to balance it out with my spiritual journey, and that's what I did. I eventually, because I was more in that, I admit I was more in the fear energy at first because I was learning about all these dark things. And then I realized, wait a second, there really is nothing to fear because we have all the power and we're all connected to God and we're all one, kind of thing. And I kind of had to like balance it out with my spiritual path. And I feel like it's very essential to do that, especially with the secret space program topic, because a lot of it is very dark. And, it's like, if you don't have that bigger picture of the spiritual nature of reality and of the spiritual path, then I feel like you can easily get caught up in the fear and in the under the weight of that. And I've seen that happen with a lot of people with this topic, where they don't seem to be very healthy spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and then but they're very, very into this topic, and many of them are experiencers themselves, and it's understandable. They have a lot of trauma from that, right? But they haven't healed and they haven't balanced that out. And I've seen people go down a very not healthy path in that regard. So I think that's essential when you're researching this type of information. So I would say maybe once you hit a point where you feel like, okay, it's not healthy anymore for me to keep, hardcore going down this rabbit hole to this degree. And then you kind of like put on the brakes and try to do something that feeds your soul and that is healthy and balance that out.
And that's very true. And one thing I'm curious with both of you is, as you're talking to people about their experiences and your own, do you stop and go, well, what positives came out of it? Let's, we've heard the negative, we've heard the narrative, but what positive have you come out of it? Or have you gained from this? And so I'm curious if you guys hit on that at all, or...
Yeah, so, I mean, if you're asking, did we hit on that specifically in the film? At the end, it definitely ends on a high note, and it's like, it's kind of like rallying the troops and like helping people understand why these people, for one, like Carrie Cassidy calls them, are soldiers of truth. Like, these are soldiers, these are true heroes that are blowing the whistle on this stuff. And, for one, why it's important that they stay protected and we honor their bravery, but also why we need to understand this for the future of our children and humanity in general. It's kind of like this bringing home message that's uplifting, and that's important. So yeah, it's all dark at the end of the day, but the silver lining in all of it is that it's all surfacing, and we're learning the truth about what they hoped would never see the light of day. And maybe it might not look pretty, but it's absolutely evidence that we are moving into a new phase of humanity where the truth, like, it's the age of transparency is what I call it. So that would be what good comes of this. You might learn about the dark truths, but that's the truth, and that's what we need to know. It doesn't matter if you believed in it once or not. It's going to become apparent that this is absolutely what's happening, not just the secret space program, the stuff with Epstein files and everything. It's all tied together, too, if you really want to go down that rabbit hole and have that conversation. So you learn about it, and it's traumatic, right? Don't attach yourself to it, but you need to understand. So we know what we're up against. We need to know where we're living, who these people are. We need to have a better understanding about who we are and where we came from and like where we're at in this game, right? And once we can do that, then we can start to climb out of that. And then they're not going to be able to pull the wool over our eyes anymore. And we can actually do something about it and take responsibility and accountability and rise to the occasion. And you've seen it. you can't turn your head to it anymore. The world is changing before your eyes, and you can either turn your head to it, but it's going to go on without you. Like, so you need to really keep up. I think keep up, but don't give your power away to the information, but stay well informed, but don't let it distract you and consume you. Like, you have to find that balance, I think, and that's where we're at. And I think there's definitely nothing but positives that come out of this at the end of the day, because, you know, the light is being shined on this darkness, and it's allowing things to heal. And these people that have been holding on to these secrets forever, that's a weight on their shoulders too. And now we're at this place where people feel safe to talk. And what that is doing for the collective, like the 100th monkey effect really is going to come into play. And more people are just going to start accepting this stuff as the new norm. And before we know it, like, this planet's going to be unrecognizable in a positive way, in my opinion.
Well said. I guess I'll continue off that. Yeah, I think that I like what you said about, you know, just because this information is dark doesn't mean, you know, we shouldn't look at it, or, you know, it's like we have to understand the world we've been living in. We have to understand this is part of the truth, right? We're at a point in history, we're at a point in time now where all the things that have been hidden under the surface is coming to light. It's the apocalypse. That's what the apocalypse means. It's the great revealing. It doesn't mean the end of the world. It means the end of the old world that we've been in, and now we're moving into a new world, or a new age, where everything hidden is now being revealed. And to change something, you have to first know it's there, right? If it stays hidden, you're never going to be able to change it or transmute that, right? So I feel like those of us that are at a certain level of consciousness are here to transmute the darkness into light. We're here to heal it. You can't heal something unless you acknowledge it first, right? So collectively, it's being acknowledged, all this darkness that's been on the planet the whole time. Things aren't actually getting worse. It's been here the whole time. It's been that bad the whole time, but it's now coming to light in this way for the first time ever. And we're all seeing what's been there the whole time. And that's not just outside in the world outside, but also within ourselves, because as above, so below, as within, so without, right? You know, these things kind of mirror what's going on inside. So we have to heal on the inside first, because if humanity doesn't heal on the inside, nothing's going to change ultimately on the outside. It's just going to get repeated over again. So it's kind of this symbiotic thing going on. I feel like there's a divine orchestration to everything, where it's this point in time where the darkness is getting revealed outside, but that's forcing us to deal with the darkness inside, or the stuff that we don't want to look at on the inside, or how we've contributed to what's going on. Because at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, like, oh yeah, well, why did I never question all these things that were told to me? And I just bought it, you know, and I didn't ask questions. I didn't question the jabs. I just gave them to my kids because the doctor told me that I had to. Or why didn't I question the food I was eating and giving to my kids? You know, all these things. Like, there's always a degree that we played a part, and that doesn't mean that we need to, you know, blame and shame and feel guilty, but that means we have to acknowledge that, and then we're able to heal and move on. Well, I think that's what's going on in a collective, and I feel like disclosure is much more than just governments around the world telling everyone that ETs exist or that UFOs are real. Like, that's just one small aspect to it, right? It's really all of this that's happening now. It's all of that. It's the spiritual awakening. It's the awakening to all the corruption. It's the awakening to how the system actually works. These dark agendas going on. It's the awakening to all these advanced technologies that we actually already have that's been hidden from humanity, which ties into the secret space program a lot, actually. We cover that in the documentary. And that's one of the biggest reasons why, in my opinion, this topic is so important. Because a lot of people hear about this topic and they're like, okay, it's fascinating, but if it's all just this breakaway thing, and, you know, why do I need to know this? It's like, why is this important? Well, there's multiple reasons for that, but one of the biggest reasons is, well, this is not, it's not fully breakaway in that this is still on the planet in a big way. And this advanced technology, we've had this advanced technology for like 100 years at least now. And it's been weaponized against humanity in secret instead of used for the benefit of humanity. And that's not okay. And, you know, I think the only reason something like that's been able to go on for that long is because 99.99999 whatever % of humanity has been completely unaware of it. And we've been lied to, and we've been propagandized and all the rest of it, right? Well, now the truth is, as you can see with the Epstein, and just everything is like age of disclosure. Just the fact that that documentary came out in that big of a way is proof of where we're at in time. And like Tyler said, it set up our documentary, I feel like, perfectly, because it's like the big question used to be, are ETs here? Are they real? Are UFOs real? And that question's almost like gone, like a foregone conclusion at this point. It's almost like, okay, and that's not the question anymore. The question is now, okay, we know that's real. Now what have we done with that, or what exists beneath that layer, right? And that's where I feel like we take the next step there with this documentary, but still accessible enough that I feel like almost anyone watching it is gonna watch this and be like, whoa, there's further, right?
It's presented in a way to where anyone can watch it at this point in the game where we're at in humanity. Mm-hmm. Anyone can watch it and say, you know, that's plausible. I don't see why that's not possible at this point, you know, and that's kind of the whole goal for it. So,
yeah.
And one thing I will say is an awareness that I've come across, and I think it kind of goes along with what both of you are showing in this movie, is when people say, oh, our government can't pull anything over our eyes, they can't do this or that, and I will simply go to them and say, well, what color is the grass? And they go, well, it's green. How do you know that's green? Well, because that's what they told us. And I was like, exactly. Or somebody will say, well, science says that the frequency of all of the other colors are absorbed and green is reflected back. And I'm like, how do we know that's the frequency of green?
Yeah.
And so it's like, when you start to fundamentally think about all those things that we have grown up and blindly accepted as truths, it's not hard to imagine the government sitting there going, this isn't real, and going, okay, it's not real just because they told us.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't want, well, obviously they don't want that stuff out. I had a point I was going to make, and I forgot now because you got me thinking about grass. And
you want me to talk first?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, if you had something to say.
I have something to say about that. Okay, so when anyone says something like that, to me, that signals they have absolutely no idea how the system actually works. And I don't say that in a, you know, it's understandable because we're not really taught how the system actually works. And that's done on purpose, right? We're kind of sold this charade of like, oh, the government is just the surface level of what you see. And then we're also sold the lie of what you just said, where it's intentionally made to look incompetent, so that you think that they can't ever keep anything a secret, and they can't really, they're not competent enough to ever, look how much they bumble and like stuff gets out, and they, you know, that's done intentionally. I think that's actually a psyop, so that you don't ever go down these rabbit holes, because you're like, oh, well, if this were true, there's no way they would be able to keep this a secret, when in fact it's the exact opposite. But it's also because we are not taught truly how the system actually works, or the nature of it. So when people say the government, most people aren't thinking about how the government actually is, where it's like the government as if it's this one monolithic thing, right? It couldn't be farther from the truth. If you want to say the government in the totality of the entire system, you've got many layers and many compartments and many things connected to that. If you want to say that's all the government, you could say that, but it's really so much more than just what we think of as the government. It's the whole military industrial complex, which includes all the intelligence agents. And I'm just speaking of the United States here. It's the most, the most central and powerful in this topic on the planet. So let's just use the topic. Let's just use the example of the United States military industrial complex. So you've got the normal government with the three branches and the politicians that are there. Well, they're not really the real power. That's kind of pretty much like the show or like a very middle management level. The real power, you could say, is above or deeper, whichever way you want to look at it than that. And you got the military, but not even the surface level of the military. You have the deeper levels of the military. And that's what gets known as the military industrial complex, because it's so much more than just that, right? It's the aerospace companies and the deep levels of that connected to this. It's the intelligence agencies, which there's 19 intelligence agencies in the US alone. And they have compartments and deep levels. And the deep levels of all of that are all connected. And that's where the secret space program technology and programs live. And it's designed to be so secretive that not only are you not supposed to know about it, the public was never supposed to know about this stuff. But people in the government, most people in the government have no idea, because everything's so compartmentalized.
Right.
People in the military have no idea because it's so compartmentalized. It's right. All need to know. It's all levels of classification, and we're dealing with technologies and protocols and everything you can imagine to keep those compartments separate and to keep those secrets hidden. But if you want to say, oh, well, that's, there's no proof that the government's ever been able to keep a huge secret. Well, look at the Manhattan Project. They were able to keep that a secret from everyone working on the thing. Everyone working on it didn't know what they were working on. They were only told what they needed to know to work on the thing until it all came together. And then they're all like, oh my God, I was making nuclear weapons. That's what I was working at. They were able to keep that a secret from everyone working on it and from ever getting out to the public as well. So that's a fact. And that was almost 100 years ago. It was during World War II. So
right
there you go. If they can do that, imagine in the last 90 years, what we've been able, to go from that in the 40s, right? The 30s and 40s. And now if you want to go research, how did we obtain this advanced technology? There's no proof of that. Well, there's actually tons and tons of proof that we've obtained advanced technology in two ways: from ETs, from, whether it's downed UFO crafts or channelings or other ways that we've got it from non-human sources. And number two, from people like Tesla or T. Townsend Brown or all these scientists that were working on electrogravitics or free energy technologies or advanced technologies that all got, basically, they're like, all right, we're going to push that down. We'll you got to hide that from the public, but then it doesn't just go away. They don't just throw it away. They know when they see something that works or doesn't work, and then it all gets buried deep down in the layers of the military industrial complex. And then the public never sees it again, but it keeps getting developed out in secret. And there's so much proof of that. We just barely scratched the surface on that in the documentary, but we do cover it. And they've been able to keep all that a secret for a long time, but nothing is 100%. So there's been whistleblowers and insiders that have spoken out over the decades and years, and there's been experiencers that have spoken out. And it seems in the last 15 to 20 years, I think with the internet and social media is one of the biggest factors there, that we've gotten some of these secret space program experiencers finally able to come out, and also the reception, that they get now from the public. Whereas 30 plus years ago, everyone would just think you're crazy or lying if you spoke out about this. Now they're like, all right, I'm able to go on the internet, and there's enough people that are going to take me seriously that, it's worth me risking my career and my relationships. And many have paid the price in those regards just for speaking out, even in the last 15 years. But they've been brave enough to do it. And we have, some very credible ones that are true experiencers of the secret space program, we believe, in our documentary, that tell their story. And they tell a lot of details about how the secrecy is kept and what goes into that. So it's very real.
Did you remember, Tyler?
What's that?
Did you remember what you were wanting?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, he kind of covered it. I was just going to say, this whole the whole purpose of this shadowy entity that exists that we call the shadow government is to do this stuff without congressional oversight, right? They don't need to go through Congress or the official government to do this stuff. In fact, it's been created so they don't even understand or have access to it themselves. So that's why whenever, they just had Obama come out in this interview, which I don't even know why he's out there doing interviews instead of behind bars, but the fact that he was asked about aliens, and he said, yeah, they're real. But there's no underground base on their Area 51, and they're not keeping extra aliens there, whatever. Unless there's something so secret that they're not even telling the presidents about. So he was kind of hinting at it, but he was making a mockery of it, but also at the same time telling you. But that's exactly it. The presidents aren't being read in for the most part. Everybody is different, and everybody plays a different role. So it's definitely something that if you expect the government to have all the answers, they don't, because they're like Aaron says, compartmentalized, and most people haven't been read into the darkest part or the deepest part of the programs, which involves things like human trafficking and slave labor and things that really is why they don't want this out. It's not necessarily about the technology. They all have blood on their hands, and it means potentially if it did come out truthfully, everyone involved would, and we had a system to lock everybody up. I don't think there's enough prisons on the planet to lock everybody up that's involved. So it's a really, really weird thing that we're dealing with here. And it's going to be done in a certain way to appease the public and kind of, it's kind of like dangling this carrot in front of us, like just giving us a little bit, and we're constantly like distracted, but they're going to do it in their own way, unless we get some big document dump like the Epstein files about the secret space program. I imagine we're not going to get full disclosure on that for quite some time.
I don't think I'm not even sure they have even documentation to put together to make a dump, because
right.
Nobody wants to have like you're saying, nobody wants their, someone to hand a document to somebody and go, oh, wait a minute, this is real. Now all these people are involved, and here's these people's files, and we owe them now for this. And yeah, paper trails, I imagine, are virtually non-existent for the secret space program for that very reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's designed to not leave a paper trail. That's how they maintain the secrecy.
Yeah.
And like William Tompkins said in one of his old interviews, like the top secret, the most top secret documents they had weren't even labeled top secret, in case there was a car crash or a plane crash when they were transferring these documents back when they had the paper documents, right? In case like something happened and those files got out, they're not going to say top secret, so no one's going to take a closer look at them. And I imagine it's going to be the same way today. It's going to be hidden under something else, kind of like all the code words for pedophilia and that we're learning about through the FBI files and the Epstein files. The same probably exists with all the black projects. They have code words for everything. They speak in comms, and they're communicating on back channels like video games. But believe it or not, video games is one of the big ways that they communicate. And Epstein has a Fortnite account. There was a whole Star Wars Battlefront thing. There's many cases where video games have been used to basically for back channel communication for these secret projects.
And they have their in-person meetings. The one everyone knows about is the Bilderberg meeting that happens once a year. But if we know about it, it's a more surface level thing, in my opinion. And that goes for everything, in my opinion. So yeah, like you said, like the deeper you go, the less there's going to be a paper trail. And at a certain point, there's going to be no paper trail. And at a certain point, there's going to be no physical evidence in any normal way that we would think of it. And I think there's many other meetings that go on that we have no idea about that are in person, and there had, so, all right. So go back to when we all found out the NSA back in 2013, when Edward Snowden came out, we all found out, oh, they're collecting all of our messages, all of our phone calls, all of our, everything all the time. and and understandably, you know, people were pissed off and scared about that. And but you know, if you follow the 17, the Q, say 17, the Q stuff, if you look at a lot of things that point to, I think the cabal or the deep state may have started that, and they wanted to collect all of our data and spy on everyone for nefarious reasons. Well, I think the white hats, or let's just call them the pro-humanity group that's trying to combat this group that's you know, there's this war going on behind the scenes. I think they were able to get a hold of that and use it against the dark, against the cabal, right? So, because what other way are you going to have proof of all of their stuff if they're not leaving a paper trail of the deepest layers of things? If they're not, there's no other way to get physical evidence, or they've already infiltrated the judicial system. They've already infiltrated the intelligence agencies. They've already infiltrated the government. Like, if the whole system's been infiltrated and rigged to keep that system going, well, that's why Q says the military is the only way, because enough of the military was still not infiltrated or free that they were able to combat these people. And it seems like we're able to use the NSA and use that system against them. So they're like, oh yeah, you guys got everything, but now we do too. And now we have all of the dirt on you guys. And we don't need anything else. And that's what Q always says. We have it all, right? He says, right. Well, it's like have it all. There's nothing you can do like, it's done, right? You can't escape anymore.
It's like using their own surveillance that they built to track us, to track them.
And that's what we've used a lot of their own weapons against them, it seems like, in the last 15 at least years or so, if not longer.
And I have a curious question for you guys, because I know you've done a really extensive research into this, and my bottom line question comes to, are there actually humans calling the shots in this? Because if there are, how could they, with a conscience and everything, you know, sign off on all of this? You know, do you feel like there are human elements able to put aside their humanity to activate these programs? Or do you think there are other beings that are running it and they're just making the slaves of the humans and making them the face that you go, oh, that's who we need to blame?
I would say all the above there, kind of. Like, that's a hard thing, because you're dealing with, there's a lot of like interagency politics that go on with all this stuff. And if you just like, I like to use this as an example, just watch any movie, any CIA movie, and just how everyone, no one can trust each other. People keep their friends close, their enemies closer. There's all this backstabbing and infighting, and no one, you know, people are, you know, shaking hands and being friends on the surface, but they're gathering intel on each other. There's so much of that going on. You can't really know who's who in this game. And I don't think anybody trusts each other. So to answer that question with one simple answer is impossible, really. I think all the examples you provided are, I think in some cases that's happening, that all of that's happening.
I think it's very layered. It's a whole hierarchy where, whether you want to look at it as the deeper or above, you know, whichever way you want to look at it, the further in that direction you go, the less human it gets of the control system. I think anyone that's fully human is just a pawn ultimately, right? And I think at a certain level it gets completely non-human, and they're at the top of that pyramid of control, and that the secret space program is a part of the system, so it goes for that as well, for the dark one at least, because it does seem like there's not just one secret space program, and I think that should be obvious. I think there's many different ones, and some are kind of some are connected to each other, and you know, but there are ones that are, you could say, benevolent, or that are at least pro-humanity, and that are run only by humans. I think like Solar Warden that we hear about is a Navy one. I think that one seems to be like that. And there's probably others. Space Force, seems to be, there's the public surface level Space Force, but I think deeper than that, it's the same thing. But the dark ones definitely are for sure, I think, non-human. And I think even the human ones, the benevolent ones, I think a lot of them, I think, are working with benevolent ETs, or ETs that have humanity's best interest at heart and are helping end this war as well. Because I think the deeper you go, the more you're going to see ETs show up, or let's just say non-human entities, NHI, show up. And at the end of the day, we're wearing this meat suit in this point in time, but I don't think the real us is human. This is just like an avatar you're experiencing anyway, right? So the real you is not human. I think we've all had other lifetimes, and you could even say parallel lifetimes, as other beings that aren't human. So I think there's a lot going on. It gets very convoluted and crazy, seemingly crazy, the deeper you go in this. And it's just really up to any one individual person of like, well, how far down the rabbit hole are you willing to go before things get too crazy for you? Because you can just keep going pretty far to where, the average person still on the planet isn't maybe ready for that level yet, but everyone's ready for a certain level. And I think we're at a point now where the majority of humanity, for the first time in a long time, is ready for a lot of disclosure to come out, and for a lot of truth to be revealed. And I think that's why it's happening now. I think it's also the point in the cycle of time that we're in. You can look at the astrology and the things that point to that as well. It's like, it's all connected. But yeah, ultimately it's all of the above. The short answer is all of the above. And what I've found is almost everything, when you say, is it this or this or this? And the answer is almost always, it's all of it. It's all of the above, almost every time. It's just a matter of how do those things fit together, and to figure out, not that is it this, or this? It's like, well, they're all happening, but how does that all work together? So.
Right. And so another term that's being thrown around a lot lately, and I'm not sure if you guys have gone into it in depth or not, or tied it to the secret space program, but the role of the NPCs that are starting to be discovered, and, are they here just to be like the blamed person and the distraction, or do you think there's a deeper role for the NPCs?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking all the questions that everybody wants to know, right? I think, these NPCs play an interesting role. For those who don't know what an NPC is, it's like a non-player character in a video game, right? And they're just like the background people, like Dolores Cannon refers to them as. They're people here that, well, if you want to take it back even further, I can go back to the whole like Enlil, Enki, Warring Brother narrative. They were like, humans were a genetic experiment, and one group of humanity was created, and basically they shut off one of the chromosomes. They removed the chromosome from the DNA, and that gene that is not existent in the gene that's non-existent in those people, in the NPCs, is what Carrie Cassidy refers to as the rebel gene. So there's this gene that activates eventually as people start to learn the truth and hear this information, and this is what sparks the awakening inside of somebody. But these NPCs, apparently they lack that in their DNA, so they're not even, it's not even within their molecular makeup to have to experience an awakening or to even fathom this stuff on a deeper level. They're literally wired differently than us. That's just a theory, I know, but it's plausible. I think that, people say, do these NPCs have souls or not? I mean, I would say maybe some do, some don't. Maybe some of them only have a fragment of their soul, and it's just kind of hard to know. I don't know what I think. My personal opinion is that they're here creating some kind of a balance in a weird way. Like if we're going to look at this, I almost feel like you need some people like keeping the machine going in a sense, while all this truth is being exposed. If everyone, like, I don't know, it would get too lopsided, and maybe they're supposed to remain ignorant. So it creates this balance for us, and it keeps this reality existing simultaneous to this whole truther movement, right? This other matrix reality that we don't necessarily agree with, but we're all part of and tied into somehow, right? And you can be in the matrix, but not of it, right? So, and that's what happens whenever you go through an awakening. So the role of the NPC in that, I think, might be to our benefit at the end of the day. As much as you just want to wring their neck and be like, wake up, why can't you see this?
How do you not see?
Yeah. Take your mask off already. Right. Like it's 2026.
They just seem like a zombie, just like
you don't need an eighth booster shot. Yeah. So I think that as much as frustrating as they are, I think they're playing a role. And I think that if it's in their purpose, their life's purpose to wake up eventually and somehow have that DNA activated, then that'll happen. But I don't know if that even properly answers your question. This is kind of my take on it.
I had no answer in mind, and so I'm just opening the field because it's something that we all hear, but in the end of the day, like you and Aaron have a large habit of putting dots together that people normally wouldn't put together. And so I was just curious if you guys were like, yeah, I'm glad you brought up the NPC because this is, what we found. And so that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, that does remind me though. So you want to get into like the Cabbage Patch Kids and the Great Reset that allegedly happened at the end of the 1800s. The Cabbage Patch Kids and the orphan trains, and like they were literally having these auctions for children. There were no adults in the picture. In fact, there was a record number of insane asylums here in the country and maybe around the world too. There was a record number of adults in the insane asylum. So the whole theory is that they were attempting this great reset. Anyone who had memory of the past and who was kind of on to their game, they got called crazy and they got thrown in the insane asylum. Meanwhile, these kids are literally being bred, like harvested, grown, at like they use the Cabbage Patch. Maybe there's something literal to it, but either way, they're being grown and harvested. And these children, they don't have parents, and this is whenever they came and basically, whenever the education system was hijacked in the medical industry and all that, 1913 or whatever year that was, that it was all put in place right around these kids were just old enough to start going into school. So they have no parents, no memory of the past. They're just like these grown people. And then now they're being, bombarded with all this, indoctrinated with all this false history and false information. They're working in these factories basically under slave conditions at a very young age with hardly any adult supervision, because any adult that would be supervising them had been locked up and put away in an insane asylum, right? So the theory is that these children that came from that era, and their offspring and that bloodline, that's the NPC bloodline. That's the bloodline that has grown up and generational like monarch mind control programming. It's in their DNA. Like they've literally been programmed from the get-go to not understand the true origins of humanity or themselves. So even down their lineage, like it's nowhere in their lineage. So that's maybe who these NPCs are as well. I don't know. This is a crazy theory. I understand that, but I think it's worthy of considering. And I don't know if
Aaron, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I'm not 100% sure on that, but there is a lot of things like we did.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a factual like 100%, but
there's a lot of things that point to it that, it's definitely a very strong possibility. And we did a whole Tartaria webinar a couple years ago that went through all that. And it's pretty crazy when you look into it, especially the buildings that you're told were built in like the 1800s when there's like horse and buggy time, and these are like extravagant, insane, like you're like, we couldn't even build this today. How did they build it 150 years ago? It's like it doesn't add up. And the mud flood stuff and the cabbage patch, like there's so many aspects to it. They got rid of all the bells. They're seeing the world's fairs seem to somehow tie into it, where they seem to have some kind of advanced technology. And we all talk about, oh yeah, they had advanced technology many thousands of years ago in like Atlantis times, which I do 100% believe is true. But it seems like it was a lot sooner than that. There's a lot of things that point to, hey, only like 150 to 200 years ago, actually, we had some kind of advanced technology that they somehow were able to wipe away from everyone's, not just the surface level of the earth, but everyone's memory. Like no one has memory of, or like, oh, hey, my grandparents used to tell me about it. It's like they somehow, somewhere down the line, it seems like there was like a reset. It does seem to point to that, where everything got wiped, and then it's like no one remembers this not that long ago past where all these things were going on. That being said, going back to the NPC thing, that is interesting because like Dolores Cannon, through her sessions, she would get a lot of the time, she would call them background people. So different term kind of for the same thing, where what kept coming through was that something like 80% or even more of humanity was background people. And the way she described it was, they're like, think of like extras on a movie set. She's like, you got to have extras to fill out the people on the movie set so that the other characters can exist in that world. Otherwise you don't have a world for them to exist in. So that kind of lines up with Tyler, what you said, is that maybe there is a spiritual significance to it, or a job for them, is like they're holding down the matrix so that we can have a certain experience. Mm-hmm. But she said, well, they're a different type of soul. She would say they're still a soul, but they're a different type, where they're on their own journey, and that's just where they're at currently, but they're fulfilling that role currently. So it's not like, they're just worthless, whatever. It's not like that. It's just, they're at a different place in their journey, and a different type of soul. And that would also line up, if the Cabbage Patch thing is true, maybe that is how they happened, at least in recent times. Maybe that's a more physical aspect of how that works. I'm not sure, but it does seem, however it works, it definitely seems like somewhere around 80% ish of humanity is at this level of NPC-ness, or however you want to say that, where they're very matrix like minded, where like they're just not asking deeper questions. They're not interested in going deeper than whatever is the day-to-day stuff, whatever they're told is true, whatever they need to just get by and work the job and operate in the matrix, and that's all they can kind of see or care about, and like, whereas like we're asking these deeper questions, we're going down these rabbit holes, we're trying to find out the truth of ourselves and reality and all these things. And some people like us are like, why aren't they doing that? Like, or why aren't they seeing what's even coming out in the news with stuff and asking the deeper questions, or trying to figure out? They're just like, oh, yep, the Epstein stuff came out. Oh, look at all that horror. Oh, that's horrible. All right, back to my job. It's like, wait, it's like, did you guys not just see that? So I think there has to be, it's like there's something on a deeper level than just, we all go into the programming of the matrix. So why do some of us, go way deeper, and some just stay at this very surface level and aren't really interested? Well, I think that's why. I think that's the real reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And Bradley Lampo 2535, I think I'm pronouncing that right, has a question I think you guys can answer. I'm not quite so sure. He says, when I discovered all the Tartaria information, I feel like our timeline has been manipulated. Your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
the whole thing is a temporal war, a timeline war. That's a whole other conversation, but absolutely. So with Tartaria, like, okay, if you're doing a reset, there's also a theory that Tartaria, or the World's Fairs, essentially, like, they didn't just destroy or take down all those buildings. we kind of like shifted dimensions, right? And so that like there was this weird dimensional split in this timeline shift where there's like this higher echelon of society. The movie Tomorrowland kind of depicts this beautifully. It's like this secret society that has an advanced civilization in another dimension right here alongside of us. And so we could be looking at something like that with Tartaria, where we just kind of shifted into this lower dimension after this reset. It's not like necessarily anything was destroyed or removed, but it's these realities split. So as far as like there being a timeline war, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. You can get into Project Looking Glass and the time technologies and how they're able to manipulate our timeline and the Mandela effects. But to answer in a nutshell, yes, I think our timeline has been manipulated over and over again, multiple times too. I think so much damage has been done. It's irreparable. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to go back and correct it. I think it's going to organically correct itself because of this ascension. But to go back and try to fix it, fix the mistakes we made, I think that's our karma, humanity's karma, to deal with. And I think that's what we're seeing now. I mean, they're experimenting haphazardly with all these advanced technologies that are literally creating tears in our space-time continuum, and just, these dimensional rifts and things are, just not what they used to be. And to try and patch all that up and make it the way it was, it's like trying to go back to normal life before COVID. Like, it's just never going to happen that way. So we're dealing with the mess that we've made, and it's up to us. And that's why I think that there is absolutely help, extraterrestrial help and higher dimensional help and angelic forces, all are absolutely assisting us. But that's just it. They're just assisting us because it's our job. It's our mess. It's up to us to pull ourselves out of this, whether we intentionally wanted to be a part of this or not. We were all somehow deceived and tricked into creating this reality that we're living in, and we all played a part in it. And now we have to learn those lessons and pull ourselves out. And because we have to learn the lessons the hard way, it's going to affect us at a DNA level. So it then reverses the monarch mind control, and our children are now going to remember this moment as this liberating time on this planet, instead of being born into a world where they have only known suppression. So it's really interesting where we're moving. And I mean, I think it's exciting, but yeah, it's a timeline war. Absolutely. And that it gets very complicated.
It also makes sense why epigenetics is coming up now and being so in the front is like you're saying, we're rewriting the DNA to where we're no longer this, we're now this, and that's what's going to carry forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that the real prize here, the real gold here, I think, is our own consciousness and our own DNA. And I think that's been the main thing that's been hidden from us. So that's why they've been able to, feed off of us and manipulate us so easily, because they've completely hidden our own nature of who we even are from us. But then they know who they are and they know who we are. So they're able to think of that power dynamic that alone creates, right? And that's why they've just been smooth sailing, able to kind of like manipulate the game and manipulate us for so long. Well, that's obviously ending now. People are waking up to that. People are waking up and seeing the truth in all aspects of what's going on. And that's why they're desperate. And that's why they're kind of flailing around right now, like a chicken with its head cut off, because they know their ship is sinking. And if they don't lock stuff down now, they're done. And I think they're already done. Just not all of them realize that, because there's levels to everything. So I think the highest level of that control system already knows they're done, but they're just kind of going down with that ship or whatever they're doing. Whereas the lower levels that probably think they still have a chance are you can kind of see what they're doing right now. They're trying to start World War III. They're trying to do another pandemic. They're trying to, they're throwing out everything they can. Oh, maybe we'll play the fake alien invasion card if they can, if they're even able to at this point. Whatever they can do to get us reined in again and lock us down again. But I don't think it's going to work. I think it's it's our destiny to be free and to go down this ascension path instead of the negative path that they're trying to steer us down. But at the end of the day, what's really steering the ship, I think, is our own consciousness, because we're master manifestors, where we have this power to create not only our individual reality, but our collective reality. And I think the more we get in a higher state of consciousness, in a more coherent, heart-centered state, the more we're going to actually be able to create a beautiful reality, one that serves all of us instead of one that enslaves us, because we've been manipulated into that. That's the whole trick, is they put out in front of us what they want us to create, and then we unconsciously have been creating it. Well, the second you raise your consciousness, you're no longer in that low unconscious state anymore. And then you're like, okay, I see now what you're doing. Oh, I see now how this system works. Now I'm going to create this instead. I'm not going to keep feeding into that. That's a natural process. It's not even like we have to try really hard. I think we're just naturally, as this awakening goes on, start stepping more and more into our power, into our sovereignty. And we're going to start naturally creating a world that we want to actually create. So that's what I'm excited about, and we're just still in that kind of chaotic phase of the old world dying and the new kind of coming into being. So we're still in that rough phase,
right? And I just want to point out, because I know, Aaron, you're in the Eastern time zone. We're at an hour mark. Do you have time to go further and have a few more questions, or do you need to go?
I do, yeah. A little bit.
Yeah, we could do maybe like 20, 30 more minutes, couple more questions. That's fine.
Okay. One theory I'm curious your guys' takes on is with the Anasazi, Atlanteans, Lemurians, Tartarians. They're all civilizations that seems to have just vanished without a trace. And I used to think, they ascended to their star being home. Now I wonder, because we're talking about humanoids in inner Earth, did they go down into inner Earth and start there and starting civilization there?
I think you answered your own question. I think both again.
Yeah.
I think there was definitely a dimensional layer where a lot of them shifted frequencies, kind of like I said with Tartaria. I think that some of them are still even residing here, just in a higher dimension. That we hear about these like Atlantean outposts, these pocket realities, and all that stuff. I think that there are survivors. I don't think it was all destroyed. I think some of them are just residing in different frequencies. And then I think ultimately some of them might have moved underground, and some might have actually been wiped out or extinct as well. I think it's all possible, but there's evidence that they've moved underground, or are still residing here, but they just moved on to a higher plane, but they're still on this planet, just another higher bandwidth, a higher frequency. So I don't know if there's any one explanation. I do know that I believe that they were targeted and wiped out, and many of them probably did not survive. I think an energy weapon was used on the Southwest here in particular, and I even think in Israel area in the Middle East. I think there's evidence. If you look at a map, you can see what looks like scarring. Like you have this green planet and these green land masses, and in the Middle East and the Southwest, it looks like it was a scar, like a battle wound, like a major Death Star type of weapon just cooked the area. And I think it was probably bombarded by like earthquakes and floods at the same time. And I think we're looking at a major war or cataclysm that happened. So, and I think because of that, some of those races moved underground, off planet, into higher dimensions, or were just simply destroyed.
Aaron?
Yeah. Everything Tyler said, absolutely. All the evidence points to somewhere around 12,000-ish years ago, there was a major cataclysm, and everything points to that before that time, there was a very advanced civilization that was planetary wide, or there was really, you could say two, because, there's Atlantis and Lemuria, at least two, that many people have past life memories of, and there's other evidence of that there were those going on. and there was some kind of cataclysm around that time, and there's a lot of evidence that points to that some of them were able to go inside the planet and continue on from already being very not just technologically advanced, but spiritually, you know, like their DNA strands, like they were all telepathic and had their abilities all online, you know. And if it was that long ago, they've just kind of continued, you know, that evolutionary path. If they didn't get, the ones that didn't get wiped out and go into inside the planet. And you know, supposedly there's different pockets of that, like Telos under Mount Shasta is a very popular one that many people have claimed they've connected with or experienced firsthand. There's different pockets all over the earth that seem to still be these very advanced beings. And I think some of them are basically us, are basically humans, just with all the abilities turned on, you know. And that's our inherent abilities that we inherently have, that we just need to turn them on, you know. And then I think there's others that are not so human as well inside the planet. And I think there's this whole other world going on. And like Tyler said, I think a lot of it's going on in a higher dimension. So like if you went there in the third dimension, you might not necessarily even see anything, or maybe at least a lot of it, maybe. And then until you raise your frequency up, then suddenly they're there. And that's what it's an individual by the name of Lowell Johnson, who we had on the show a few years ago, who claims he went into Telos physically, but he said they had to like raise his vibration up to theirs for him to be able to enter and to see anything and experience anything. So that's what he even said. And he tells this whole very detailed experience of like, they gave him like this whole tour of the city of Telos. And there's a lady by the name of Diane Robbins who for like something like 40 years now has been channeling. She claims to be channeling inner earth beings. She says their names and she writes books on it and all of the technology they have and all of the stuff going on. And she says the same thing. They're at a higher frequency. She says that as well. And she says they have their own space fleets and, you know, they're going off planet in their own ships and they're super advanced, you know. So it's kind of like Atlantis just continued on inside the planet. And we're here, the surface dwellers, kind of like thinking we're the only people here, when in reality there's so much more. It's been here the whole time. It's just been kind of hidden from us until now. And it's now finally kind of like we're finally just now being merged back in with that reality that's been here the whole time. You know?
Yeah, and what's interesting too is like in the Sands of Time book, I just did an Instagram live today, and I kind of read through a chapter where the main character is having a conversation with this reptilian, and she's basically explaining that they believe that they were the original. They believe this is their planet, you know, and they're like the original Terrans. And she was explaining, take this with a grain of salt, but like they've been living underground on this planet for centuries, essentially. And she said, under every major landmass on Earth, there is a reptilian or extraterrestrial civilization underground. They've been coexisting on this planet with us, and we never, you know. And the only interference there is they have approached our government and our military and made these deals. And in fact, you know, they were bad deals, but they convinced our government to build, our military to build these deep underground military bases, these installations for them, like housing for some of these extraterrestrials in exchange for this technology and in exchange for a number of other things. But they were giving them breadcrumbs as far as the technology go. They wouldn't give them the full thing. So they would just like give them this toy to play with, and it would take them years to try to reverse engineer or figure it out. When they could have easily given them all the pieces. But it's just this game that's been played for a long time on this planet. And the whole purpose I brought this up is because of the alleged extraterrestrial civilizations that have just been here the whole time, you know. And life has been on this planet for much longer than modern man. And it goes back millions of years and many eras of humans and different types of beings on this planet, things that, of all the stuff in myth and legends, I believe was all here at one time, including giant trees and dragons and all this weird stuff. And what's also interesting is that Reptilian in that book said that the closer you get to the Earth's core, the lesser the gravity, because the gravity is in the Earth's crust, like a lot of the hollow Earth theories. So whenever you hear like Billy Woodard or these other inner Earth testimonies, like whenever you get down to hollow Earth, not like the Agartha network and the crust, but when you get to hollow Earth, you start getting taller and lighter. It's because the gravity is actually less there. It's actually the exact opposite of what mainstream tells us. They think gravity is emanating from the core, but it's something that exists within the crust, and we don't actually even understand it. And in those books, they say, until you understand what gravity is, you'll never be able to manipulate time and space and understand this reality until you understand what gravity actually is, not where it comes from, but what it is. So they're hinting at, okay, we don't really understand gravity. And if we understand gravity, then you can start to understand how to basically bend space and time and work with the ether and all that.
And that's how many of these UFOs are operating. It's gravity control, essentially. And that's what, like Bob Lazar way back in the day, he said that. He's like, yeah, they figured out how to manipulate gravity, obviously, and that's how these craft are flying around and with a free energy and it's. And he's like, yeah, I fully understand why they want to keep this secret, because he's like, you can essentially do whatever you want. Once you can manipulate gravity, you can pretty much do anything. And what's going to stop you unless other technology at the same level, right? But you got to understand what gravity is first to be able to do that, right? So I think these more advanced races or us in the past, we were working in this way. We had these advanced technologies, and we could bend space and time, because if you can bend gravity, you can bend space and time, and you can travel extremely far distances very quickly, in my opinion. And you can make right angle turns like we see UFOs do, or do these crazy things where it makes no sense to us. Like, wait, there's beings in there when they like splat against the wall. Like, well, like, no, because they're on their own little reality bubble, because they're able to bend space and time around the craft, and they're in their own bubble. That's not, to them, it's like they're just sitting still. It's like nothing's happening, but they're able to do all these crazy things and go so fast. Our physics and science that we have on the surface level has been highly, just distorted, manipulated. And I think a lot of this has been figured out, but again, like, it's been buried in the deep levels of secrecy that we're still told, oh, we've only figured this is the cutting edge of science, and it's like so much of it's wrong and very limited. But I think it's going to come out sooner than we think. I think all this stuff's going to come out, and we're going to be able to all learn the real science and how to build these things and how to manipulate.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
There's plenty of free energy inventors out there. People are finding new ways, like Patrick Riley with the blockchain. You don't have to apply for a patent anymore. There's new ways to do things. You apply for a patent, you're essentially putting a nail in your own coffin. Like, you're never gonna get to that technology or whatever it is you invented is never gonna see a lot of.
You're telling the system, hey, here's something you want to suppress and you want to kill me, and and that's how people in the past have tried to do it, and they all got taken out. They all got immediately taken out, right?
But according to William Tompkins saying, like, basically every book in every university on this planet is misinformation as far as every technical field goes. And what I think what we're looking at is, so if you get a physics book, right, or a chemistry book or whatever, they're giving you like the bare bones foundation, the building blocks of what chemistry is, what physics is, but they're intentionally leaving out key components of these equations. So you think you're working with everything that you have to work with, but you're only given a portion of the recipe, and therefore you're eventually going to hit these dead ends. And then you have a PhD in this subject. You've studied it for years, right? 8 years. So by the time you get out of school, you've exhausted the topic, your field. And whenever you start hitting these dead ends, you're like, well, it must be impossible to time travel. It must be impossible to go faster than the speed of light. Well, it is with the equations you've been given. But if they were to give you these pieces, or in some cases just flip parts of the equations around, it changes literally everything. And that's what we're dealing with here. So no one's given the correct information to start with to even figure this stuff out. And that's all been done by design. So we hit these dead ends.
Or, oh, sorry, real quick. I want to add to that. Like, and then you're told people like Tesla was, oh, he was a quack. He was a crazy man. Like, he wasn't accepted in the scientific community. Well, you're told that so you don't ever look at what he was doing and you don't take it seriously. Because as soon as you do that, you see he was on to the real stuff, right? And then you look at like the explosion of electrogravitics work that was done in the 1950s. It was all over. It was hyped up. It was like all over. It was in Popular Mechanics and all these magazines, and there's all this talk about it. Oh, we're gonna have flying cars. We're gonna have all this stuff. Look, they're working on this stuff, and then it all just went silent. Well, why did it go silent? Did they just suddenly realize, oh, actually, there's nothing to this? We hit a dead end, and then we just dropped it, and then stopped talking about it completely. No, it went silent because they realized it had to go silent. It didn't have to, but the system wanted it to, because they're like, whoa, we're coming on to some real stuff here that would change the entire planet overnight. Yeah. And they had to bury it, right? That was in the 50s. You can look this stuff up. Like, that was going on. And then right after that gets buried, NASA gets created, and this whole dog and pony show, like, oh, this is all we have to go to space, rockets.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what that reminds me of, Aaron? That episode of Seinfeld where they're talking about the flying cars, and Jerry's asking George, he's like, why don't we have flying cars? In the 50s, flying cars, like, they seem like they're right around the corner. And
exactly.
George is like, he goes, because the government is really touchy about us being in the air. They don't care what we do on the ground, but anything in the air is a big production.
It's a big production.
Yeah.
Exactly. Seinfeld.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is you reminded me, we are taught in school 4 minus 4 is 0, or 0 is an answer. And then I remember when I went into calculus, the first thing the teacher says is there's no such thing as a 0 answer. And I'm like, wait, why did we just spend like 12 years being drilled into us 0 is the answer, and now you're telling me it's not the answer?
Right. So, well, they don't even know. So
right. It just shows you the nature of, like, they'll tell you whatever's they want to whoever writes textbooks or is in control at one time, and then they're like, oh, actually that's false, and here's the truth. And okay, except what if this is false? When in 10 years we find out,
So that brings me, I have 2 questions for you now, Michael. What is 4 minus 4?
I would say it's 0. But
all right. What color is the grass?
It's the frequency of green.
All right. Stop lying to us. No, that's fine.
I do have an interesting question for you guys. And sorry, Aaron, I just want to make sure I get this one in before time runs up. And that is, we're talking about inner Earth beings, what they possibly could be and everything. And talking about the secret space program, we're led to believe it's all being operated by outside or off-world entities or entities here. Could inner Earth be a part of the secret space program?
I think it's very possible. I think to some degree, for sure.
I would say, you hear about like Ashtar Command and like obviously the Confederation of Planets and stuff, and a lot of them are talking about involving these inner Earth societies, right? So I think that maybe if you're talking about some sort of a galactic federation or a confederation of planets, that I think these races within the planet that have these their own space programs, it may not be the secret space program through the military industrial complex, but it is in essence a secret space program that we're not supposed to know about or we just don't know about, that I do think is part of this bigger overall picture. I don't think that they're necessarily involved. Maybe factions of them are involved with our military, but from what I've read and from what I understand, they actually don't want anything to do with our military. In fact, they do everything they can to avoid them, and they won't even, like in Billy Woodard's testimony, he was basically fast tracked to the military to be a liaison, like an ambassador for Telos and our government, because they wanted to talk to somebody that they trusted, one of their own, not one of our government, because they know they can't trust them as far as they throw them, and they always have an agenda no matter what. They figured that one out a long time ago. So, and they figured out a long time ago that we're not interested in bettering ourselves and the planet. Many offers have been made to help humanity in the past. Valiant Thor and other inner Earth groups and extraterrestrial groups, they have made offers like, we can pull you out of this mess, but it would mean giving up any leverage that they had or any upper hand that they had on these other countries. Mm-hmm. And to them, we're still this like war, like this simple-minded war fighting, human race, and they can't get past the fact that they would lose a technological upper hand against these other countries if we decided to give up our nuclear weapons and stop using them and use this technology to unite us. They don't want that.
They're more worried about power and control than they are about humanity.
So they sold out the human race essentially,
exactly,
for power and control.
But that highlights the whole problem, is that we've unconsciously given the power to people that don't have our best interests at heart and that are way more interested in power and control and manipulating whatever they can to keep that power and control in place than actually benefiting humanity and actually, us thriving. And so this awakening is kind of like, you're fighting against God there. You're fighting against the universe, because now we're at a point in time where the awakening is happening and they're losing that power control, whether they like it or not. They're going out kicking and screaming. And the ones in the system that, everyone's being forced to make a choice here. So there's ones that you're like, you know what? I value humanity more than I value being a part of this control system. And they're working to help. And then the ones that are still in power that want to keep that power and control at all costs and keep the enslavement going at all costs are fighting tooth and nail, and they're going out kicking and screaming. But that has to happen so that we take our power back, and that now we're going to only let people be in a position of power if they are on that page. In my opinion, that's kind of how it's going to play out. Mm-hmm. And then these other ETs and beings, that they're going to be able to work with us, because the way the system's been for a long time, like how can you work with humanity when they're enslaved by people that want to keep the enslavement going and keep the power and control going at all costs and keep the nuclear weapons at all costs, and like keep the wars going, keep killing each other at all costs. Like, you can't, that system has to change first for them to like fully come out in an open way and work with us and share their technology fully. Right. So that's what's happening. We're at the stage now where this transformation that we're doing it, we're awakening, we're changing what we can. And then at a certain point in time, ETs and Earth beings and ETs, are going to be able to more openly merge and share stuff with us, because we'll be at a level where we can now do that in a safe way. Right. So that's a big picture of, where we're at. I think it's inevitable. And I think honestly, in many of our lifetimes, we're going to see that change really come to fruition in that way.
Aaron, you bring up a really good philosophical question there. When you say some of them are choosing humanity over their power and helping, can we truly trust that they are and forgive them for that? Or do we just use them and then give them the same punishment as the others? And because, at what point do we say we really forgive? And what is capable of being forgiven versus this has to end, and so there is no room for this?
That's a great question, but I think forgiveness is always the highest path. But that forgiveness does not mean there's no
accountability,
or that you're saying it was all okay and it's fine. And no, or that's going to be able to continue. No. That's not, it's a completely different thing, right? Forgiveness just means you're freeing yourself from being in the energy of hatred or revenge, or like, oh, I'm going to get you back, as if that's justice. Well, that's not necessarily real justice. That's just you lowering yourself too, because they want you in that energy, right? And that's why the cabal is always trying to bait you into, they don't care whether you know what's going on and you hate them. They just want you in that hatred energy and want you in that low vibrational state. Well, we need to make sure we're not doing that. We're staying in the heart energy and the higher frequency, but also holding accountable who needs to be held accountable, and also learning the lessons and having the wisdom gained from those experiences. Because when you truly gain wisdom, you now have strong discernment, and you now know when accountability needs to be held and when, but you also can still stay in a state of love with that, right? So that's the key is I think, enough dark stuff's coming out that, if I feel like if too much comes out too fast, the planet, we could descend into chaos and destruction and anarchy and all the rest of it, right? Because it's too much too fast. But it's just enough that it's disgusting, it's horrific, but we're learning to take our power back in a safe way. Get to that place.
Right. And to add on to that, another way to look at this too is, so most of the people involved, first of all, never wanted to be involved. They were blackmailed into those positions, mind controlled, real lizards. I mean, there's so many things, MK Ultra, so many things that were
doing themselves, essentially.
Yeah, so many things that were done to them. And then a lot of them also are born into it and groomed from a very young age. And it is part of that monarch mind control. So they don't know any other way of life. In fact, some of this stuff is normal to them. Some of these crimes that we consider horrific, it's normal everyday life for them, and they don't even understand that it's wrong. And I've seen that there was this girl who basically broke free from this sex trafficking ring years ago, and she was on Dr. Phil, and he was interviewing her, and that was the only way of life she knew, and she said that she missed it, and she was being sincere. And he's like, how could you miss that? And she's like, that's normal to me. She's like, that, but it doesn't mean that it was right, but that's all she knew, right? So then therefore there's a highly likely chance that she's going to do the same thing to someone else. So we're talking about a generational thing. So if we want to hold everyone accountable for this, something that happened that began, this domino, this ball began rolling years ago, right? Or centuries ago. And we're at what we're seeing now is the byproduct of all of that. And some people are absolutely knowingly committing these crimes, and justice should be served where it needs to be served. But I also think it's really important not to freeze these people in time as the enemy, because most of them were not there of their own volition. They did not want to be in that position. They found themselves there by maybe their ego got in the way, and they wanted to know what was behind that door. They wanted to be read into this program, not understanding the consequences of now knowing this top secret information and what that would mean, as far as them literally being involved in these criminal organizations. So there's so many layers to this. Yes,
there's so many layers.
Some people absolutely should be locked up when we're talking about this stuff that's done to children. And if not worse, if not worse, right? So it depends on the individual and what was done, but really at the end of the day, forgiveness is key. Like, we have to understand that everyone at some level is a victim here. Everyone. We're all born into this shit show, and the rules are not fair. And some people know what they're doing, and those are the people that absolutely I feel like should be punished, maybe. But let God do that. That's going to be worked out between them and God, and we don't have to spew hatred towards them, because that's not helping.
Exactly. Your energy flows where your attention goes. So like what you focus most of your attention and energy on is what you're going to manifest. So, we need to make sure we're focused on the right things. Yes, we need justice. Yes, we need accountability. Yes, we need, we need to do something about these crimes and about this horrible system that's been in place. Well, there's the key there. It's just the system's been designed. It's not like this. It's not like you can say, "Oh, the system's broken," and that's how it's. No. The system was designed to allow this stuff to happen intentionally, and that's
working beautifully.
And it's been working exactly how it's designed. That's the craziest aspect of this, and that's what I think people are. I can see starting to have that realization. Like, whoa, they knew this stuff. The FBI, all of it. They knew this stuff was going on decades ago, and they intentionally made sure it kept going on. That's because they're part of that same system. The system makes sure all its parts are operating. This was done very intentionally, and that's a thing a lot of people are having a hard time right now wrapping their minds around or dealing with, because it's like, whoa, the world I've been living in is not the world I thought I was living in this whole time. And it's this whole inverted, crazy, thing that's been run by these very dark people and very dark beings. Well, that needs to change, obviously. And I think we're going to naturally create a new system or clean up that system and make it so that it actually does serve justice. It actually does hold people accountable. People aren't going to be able to get away with this stuff anymore. And, but that doesn't mean we need to keep go on witch hunts constantly and be paranoid constantly, or because now you're going back into that lower frequency and you're just going to create problems all over again. Right. So you got to kind of have that balance of justice, accountability, and also forgiveness, and staying in a love energy, and realizing, like Tyler just said, many, if not most of these people were either born into it or forced into the system. And even though they're still responsible, you're still responsible for your own actions no matter what. That's still your karma. But at the same time, when you have that understanding, you can forgive a lot easier when you go, okay, I see now why these people were doing what they were doing. I see now how this system has operated. And at the end of the day, I think we all, I think true Christianity is being Christ-like, is operating the way Yeshua actually operated and how he showed it. And he said, forgive your enemies. He said, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. Ultimately, anyone who does evil ultimately doesn't know what they're doing. I think they do, but they don't, because otherwise you wouldn't do it. Because when you realize anything you do to anyone else or anything outside of you, you're actually doing to yourself. And I think once humanity gets to that level, then we're going to, naturally things are going to, because no one's going to want to do evil to other people or harm other people naturally. Because ultimately, like Yeshua said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not out there. You're never going to do enough things out there to get everything just perfect so that, okay, now we got the formula down. And it's like, no, it's an inside job. And when you clean up the inside, the outside is going to naturally get cleaned up, because as within, so without. You're going to manifest from within. So the real cleanup is within humanity, and the real awakening is within. And that's what we're really moving into. And that's why this is all happening in the first place, because there's an awakening going on. The system can't keep operating anymore in the shadows like it used to. Right. So we're able to kind of see what's been going on, and now we get to deal with it. And it's going to be messy, and it is messy, but at the end of the day, it's going to be beautiful on the other end of this. And I think all the lessons that need to be learned are going to be learned. And, we're going to naturally take our power back and create something that benefits humanity rather than keeps enslaving us and keeps harming our most vulnerable and innocent, the children, which is how it's been operating. So I just have faith, and I know things are changing, and I know there is a cleanup underway, and there is a beautiful reality that we're moving into, and it's just we're in the messy phase of that transition still.
Right. And we're actually a little bit over the hour and a half. And so I want to leave you guys with a quick thought about, when we talk about the program and everything and the agencies, look at the X-Files. Remember when they first met, Mulder and Fox, or Fox and Scully? His first question to her was, who did you piss off, or how did you screw up to get here? And so, and what was here? That was the branch or office of the truth. And so we're programmed now to believe if you want the truth and you want to go after the truth, you're going in the way of a punishment or the wrong career. And so, yeah,
Right.
I mean, it really is a program, and we got to, look at, what program do we want to start supporting?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
You're going to follow your internal guidance system of what really, draws you, or you're going to be like, well, no, I'm going to do this because that's what society tells me I should do, or that's what my family is going to like, or that's the old paradigm, right? Where you're just kind of people pleasing and you're doing what you think you're supposed to do. Well, the truth has no agenda there. The truth is the truth. And you either want the truth or you don't, So.
Exactly. And so to end this, would you guys like to state again where you can watch the documentary and where they can follow you?
Yeah. You can the best way to follow everything we do is on our website, journeytotruth.online. Has everything we do. But if you want to follow the weekly podcast, you can do so on YouTube. It'll come out on YouTube first and then all the other platforms to follow. So once or twice a week, we have new episodes that drop. Our Patreon, you can find, just go on Patreon and search Journey to Truth Podcast, or just go through our website and you can find bonus content over there, including the documentary. It's the only place you can watch it right now is on Patreon. So journeytotruth.online has everything we do. And if anyone's interested, the odd chance that someone's here that wants to go to Hawaii in April, we still have some tickets left. And there's it's going to be a blast, April 20th to the 24th. And we would love to see you there if you feel like coming. Journeytotruth.online. And if you can't make it in person, we have virtual passes as well for $55.
That's pretty nice, actually.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We can't wait. We're super excited.
Yeah, the virtual pass is a great deal for sure for people that can't make it in person. So.
Yes, and so Aaron, do you have anything coming up that you want to promote as well?
I mean, the Hawaii conference, what Tyler just said, it's going to be an amazing time. Other than that, that's kind of the big main thing we have coming up. Yeah, I mean, Tyler and I both have a book that we've written in the last couple of years. If you want to check that out, Tyler's is called Bleed Through. It's available on Amazon. Mine is called Waking to the Infinite Universe. There it is, right there. Mine is called Waking to the Infinite Universe. I don't have a copy I can grab, but it's available on Amazon as well. And if you want to check those out. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Awesome. Well, I have one last message for both of you. It's something new that I've added to the show since you were on last. And that is from my heart and the heart of my shows to you both. Thank you for what you're doing for humanity. It's seen, it's heard, it's felt, and it's appreciated more than you know. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that sincere gratitude. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And thank you for what you're doing too. We're all equal players in this.
Yes, thank you. And it seems hard to remember that sometimes, but yes, we are all equals and we all have our roles to play, and that's the beauty of life is we're all actors in a stage, and we just have to remember we're writing the story.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for coming on again, and blessings to you and success on your ventures, because you have so many in your podcast. Continued success and congratulations on 7 years. That is a huge accomplishment. So kudos to you guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's been 7 years, but it's here we are, and we're still doing it. We must be crazy,
right?
Against all odds, we've had people
against quite a bit of
public scrutiny and backlash and character assessment,
platforms
and rumors,
taken down, and censorship, and you name it. Yeah.
So we're still here, and we're not going anywhere, despite what anybody wishes.
We're not going anywhere.
Well, keep it up, keep the faith, and with that, I'm going to say good night, and make sure you subscribe, follow along, because you never know when they're going to pop up next and where they will be, and follow along my shows as well, and blessings to you all, and have a wonderful rest of the week.
All right.
Good night, everyone.